something out of this book to start. And it is a book about us, of course. It says, in this book you will find stories of survivors in their own words and unedited. There are all survivors of the Roloff ministry home centered around the People's Baptist Church, Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1970s and 80s. Thanks to the Constitution of the United States and the laws protecting journalists and their identities and their sources, I am only sharing their stories by first name. Many of these survivors still live in fear of the money and powerful political affiliation associated with many of these homes. One day we hope the fear will subside, but as long as money and politics go hand in hand, a child's rights to protection under the law will never mean as much as separation of church and state laws being abused and used as a means to allow this to continue. Many of these organizations' loyalty to the politicians that will turn a blind eye to what goes on behind scarred walls. Hundreds will flock and bow down at the altar of repentance of the damnation of hell. To this day, I wonder if Lester Roloff knew exactly what went on behind the walls of the Roloff homes. Then sets in, and as I'm reminded, all the secrets we were forced to keep in the fundamentalist home I was raised in and reform homes, whose doors I entered over the years. They knew, they didn't care. It was the money in the name of God. How could they not? So I just wanted to read that little bit. That was one of the books that I have. Right now, as far as I know, there's 84 books that mention us, plus the films and other things. But now, my little history that I've been going through, I'm just at the beginning of the 70s. So we know that ACE schooling was made for Rebecca girls. Charter school now, thanks to Trump and DeVos. We know Christian Law Association started with Lester Roloff's case. We know that the abuse under religious exemption was by the Supreme Court was Lester Roloff's case. We know that horrific abuse in God's name was going on and no one cared, like they said. We know we got thrown into the political ring and flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican in 1979. You have to remember, back then it was Ford and Nixon. Well, Nixon was out, but Ford was president. Jimmy Carter was just getting ready to come in. And things were really getting ready to get a little bit crazy. So we know that that Roloff is the one that pushed for the politicians to be saved in the early 70s, the freedom rallies and all the rallies, and exploited for millions of dollars. We know he sold our babies for love donations, love gifts. It wasn't never given up or adopted. You were taken and sold in. You were taken from the mothers. So that's child trafficking. We know he made millions of dollars off of us on lies and betrayal. But all this is just the beginning of it. Just the beginning. Because we was going to be the first Christian city for the Christian nation. You know, we were getting trained for that. So I'm going to go ahead and post a couple things about Falwell. When I get into Falwell, it's going to get a little deep, but little crazy stories. But the truth with proof. I mean, I'm going to show you how evil these people are. What they do to children. Because a lot of people say, Obama made the kids in cages. Really? Because I got pictures of kids in cages. We was kept in a cage. I got Jerry Falwell. I got pictures of kids in cages way before Obama. Actually, they were made in 1973 version quest. And if you want to know the truth, Trump tried to just expand it with federal funding to also. But, you know, there's a lot of deep history that people don't know that has to do with Christian nationalists and the Christian extremists with children. And it's horrific what they've done. And it goes really deep. And I'm going to get a little bit more into some complex stuff later on. So if you want to listen and learn the real history, the facts of the children that survived it, because there's not just me, there's many of us on here. You can listen to all of our stories. And, you know, it's just an old woman just trying to tell the truth about really what happened. And it wasn't nice. Stop child abuse for profit. Stop hiding abuse behind religious exemption. And stop claiming you're a Christian and abusing children. What the world is wrong with you people? What's wrong? You know, before I got banned, I had a very large account and very large following. And then I got sick, and I've been struggling for the last 6 months on top of it. But I had a lot of history, a lot of news articles, a lot of facts, proof, of receipts. And people ask me how I know this history so good. Well, because I lived it. I was there. This is my childhood. I'm not just saying a story out of a history book. I'm telling you my childhood. I was a foster child from the state of Illinois, a ward of the state. 1976, I was sold. Me and 800 fosters were sold to the state of Texas for the price of $3 million. We were called ship kids. We were throwaway kids, institutionalized. I was sent to Rebecca Home for Girls, Lester Roloff. Only thing is, he was a right-wing evangelical. He started Christian nationalists. We opened for Bush and Reagan at the GOP Convention Center in Dallas. 1977, we had Save the Nation rally. I've been to rallies and paraded around governors, senators, and my childhood was very political. I met presidents, and I mean, I'm just a little girl. I was just a little girl. But we were getting trained to be the first Christian city for the Christian nation. See, we were before Reagan and Bush and Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell and moral morality, everybody wants to start with him and Bush for some reason, and Reagan. We were before him. They came to us. Actually, the article I posted before this video, Emerging of the Right Wing, it was Lester Roloff, the Rebecca girls, and believe it or not, the Texas Board of Education. That is who started it. And what it all started, I'm going to go from the very beginning of this history, as I remember it as a child, and I remember it very well. I know the ideology and the theology very well, and that is right there. Brown versus the Board of Education. That started it. To stopping the segregation, and you're going to go, how does this civil rights, affected the religious right wing, and how did all this come about, and this and that? I want to explain something, and I'm starting from the beginning. See, when they stopped the segregation in the schools, we, the white kids, the fundamentalist kids, we got segregated. We started Christian academies because we could not mix. See, there was no mixing between us. It was not allowed. They were separatists. Separatists was no state and government, church and state law. They were very strict on that. And all of a sudden, it flipped, and that's all I knew. Politicians and evangelicals as a child. They were so embedded all my life. This church and state, that's nothing but crap, if you ask me, because I have never seen it, and I've been with them all. So, this became, the segregation schools came Christian academies. And I even got original news footage, actually, from 1970-something. I got a lot of original stuff. I don't know why I kept all that crazy stuff as a child. Who would ever think my childhood would be this important? Because it was really a crazy childhood. But when they gave me to Lester Roloff, and I was cut from the world, we had no worldly contact. We were going to go to Big Sandy, Texas, and we bought Herbert Armstrong, which now is where the Duggars are and IBLP is. The Green from Hobby Lobby bought it, actually, a few years back. And they're there still today. And so with Bill Gothard, but Bill Gothard's banned now, but he's an old man. But it's a long story. But anyway, this is how it all started. The religious right is right there. No mixing. And I never could understand that. They taught hate. These God-fearing, loving Christian people taught hate because of the way somebody looked or the color of their skin. My heart just wouldn't accept it. I was a strong-willed child, I guess, because I could not understand how you hate somebody that you didn't even know. But this is how the Christian Academy started. When this came to effect, it was good on one end, but it flipped and put us in the segregation schools. And we were kept away from the world, all from the world. No worldly contact, not with other Baptists, nobody. We were separate from everybody, our own little place. And I remember at 12 years old when we was moving to Big Sandy, he said, what we don't have there, we're going to build. We'll never need nothing again. I was thinking, this is it. I'm never going back home again. I'm never seeing my grandma again. I'm really in a cult. Christian nationalist is a cult. So I came across an old video while I was looking for something else I'm going to put on with this one. Now this I think I made in 2017 with my large account. I probably had 10,000 comments on this video. This video went nuts. But it was only my opinion on how I felt, and I still probably feel the same way. I haven't listened to it, but I remember the video, and since I'm talking about Brown versus education, that's what this was talking about. So this is right after I think Trump got elected in 2007, so 16, but 17, I think this came out. And I was trying to explain to people exactly what this was, what positive eugenics is, what Heritage Foundation is, what is all this, the Project 2025, because we heard that 50 years ago. I mean, that ain't nothing new to us. So, but it was so new to everybody else, like the book burning. Everybody had to fit on that. I'm like, we did that twice a year. But anyway, this was an interesting video. Like I said, it had a lot of comments, a lot of arguments, and it's just how I felt. But this is just an old video in 2017 of Brown versus education.
Dr. Oz thinks getting rid of public schools will solve crime because having
Actually, Brown versus education is getting ready to come back up in front of the Supreme Court. You can research it. They had that put in the Roe and Wade bill, the abortion bill. I kept trying to explain to people, nobody wanted to listen. Now they're getting everything in place. That's why they're attacking the public schools. Plus, Betty DeVos, if you know who she is, Trump's Secretary of Education, the Christian Adoption Agency lady, she's really in for the school vouchers. That's where the school lunches and stuff are coming from. See, if they take away the free lunches, they're going to hurt the lower class kids. See, the white kids and the upper class kids, they're going to be okay. But the poor kids and the color kids and brown kids and polka dotted kids or whatever, special needs kids, they're not. They're getting ready to be attacked. Believe me. When the Brown versus education bill gets in front of that Supreme Court and it flips, America will see what these wackadoodles are doing, what they're planning on doing. Only thing you got to do is research it.
Well, I haven't got a personal opinion from all of them, but to me, I don't think it's going to work out too well.
Why not?
Just because most kids prefer public school, in my opinion.
This used to be a prison. Soon it is to become a private academy. White parents will be putting their children behind these bars. This will be done in the name of giving them quality education. It represents one extreme that white parents are going to get their children out of public schools.
Hi everyone. I made a video last week about Brown versus education, how that really had a big play, the civil rights and the religious right and things. And a lot of people think it's abortion, but it's really not. It was Brown versus education. Well, this is Lester Roloff. That is me. This is 1977. He had 5 films. I was in 3. Bob Jones University, Bob Jones, he funded these films. And it was a big political. This is probably the 4th or 5th rally I've been to at this time. And these were huge rallies. I got some videos of them. And we went into the capitals and seen senators and governors. They came to the Rebecca. There's plenty of footage about all this. But I want to tell you a little history of Lester Roloff and how this came about. It all started with Billy Graham, believe it or not. Now, this is my own history. This is my story as a child, my childhood story. But this is the truth. But they got pretty upset because Billy Graham was a neo-evangelical. He came from modernism. They were separatists and fundamentalists. So they separated from the Southern Baptists and became the ILP in 1958. But Frank J. Norris and started really in the 1930s, 40s. And then, all of a sudden, he had a big church in, I think, Dallas, somewhere in Texas. He had 2 churches. And he ended up boom somebody in his office and got away with it back in them days. But Jack Hyles, Curtis Hudson, Bob Jones, Rice, John R. Rice. These are the Lee Robinson. These are the ones that broke off from the Southern Baptists and became the Independent Fundamental Baptists. They were separate, did not believe in church and state. They did not mix until they came after Roloff in the Rebecca home. Then they became just like that, and went nuts ever since then. They became wackadoodles for real. When they got involved in them politics, 1978, we flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican for the first time in 120 years. Hill versus Clements. They gave Lester Roloff the credit. I got a lot of history. I'm going to prove all this crazy story to you. But this is how it all started with Lester Roloff. When we flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican, and you can when you look up Clements, it'll say Governor race changed. It's very well publicized. We're in the Texas archives and stuff like that. It's very noted and documented that the story I'm telling. So now we are fighting the politicians to be saved. We're going to be the Christian city. Then you got the Joshua boys who came along later on. We had the Anchor boys and the Lighthouse boys, which were going to, we're going to be the main politicians, and we were going to sit at home and make the babies. Talking about handsmaid tales, we already lived all this stuff. People think this is a joke. This ain't a joke. I've been trying to say this for 40 years. Nobody wanted to listen. Now they're very in play. But really, fundamentalists see that people don't realize they've been in politics and power since the late 1800s. Brown, Rice, they all were fundamentalists way back in the governor days. And I got a book, like our little history book we were taught, and it goes back a long ways. And it goes back to a lot of things that ain't so nice in history. And people like, oh, they're not a cult, they're not the 3-letter K's, or they're not this, they're not that. Then you don't know the history of these people like we do, like the ones that were there, because it is very, very not a nice history. It's right now, it's from negative eugenics to positive eugenics. Everything they taught is happening. It's coming right into play. It almost shocks me sometimes. I listen to things in the news and stuff, and it almost shocks me sometimes. I think, oh my God, it really happened. They really got this far. I never dreamed they would get this far, but they did. And a lot of it had to do with Lester Roloff. And then Jerry Falwell got it. I got some stuff on him too I'm going to post. But it's all surprising how deep all the history goes back to this one man.
No prospects from passing new laws with what we got to work with. Unless we can get a bunch of representatives and senators saved by the grace of God and political leaders that know the Lord, how can we pass righteous legislation?
This is part 3 of my childhood story and the religious right. As you know, I was with them all from the very beginning, and this is my own personal history, my own personal story. But this is a key player that very few I ever hear talk about it in any type of thesis, documentaries, experts. I don't hear his name mentioned too often, and he's a major player. Let me introduce you to David Gibbs, Christian Law Association. Now, he represented a small church in Ohio, and he said he came home on a Thursday night, told his wife, I'm going to represent any church or anybody that needs help. I'm going to do it free. I'm going to help them. You know, this is my calling from the Lord. He said Monday morning, he got a phone call from Lester Roloff. He never dreamed that he would be in one of the biggest battles for 8 years. And not only Lester Roloff, we call him the fixer. He's represented everyone that's hurt children and got most of them off. I have to give him credit. That's one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. Even though I was a child and the things that I know, that's a smart man. He was intelligent. That's all I can say, because he outwitted them all. And like I said, he was even in 1996 when W. Bush, we got exiled from Texas in 1985. 1996, George W. Bush brought us back to Texas, Roloff survivors, Roloff, and put my abuser as a president of TAC, the Texas Christian Association for Children, and which 2 years later he got stepped down because of 2 abuse cases. But anyway, David Gibbs represented him in that, you know, and he's been representing. They're still up and running. His son works for him. He represented Bill Garther, every one of these Jack Kyle's cases that have based on hurting children. He was involved and got most of them off. Like I said, he knows the laws in the states very well. He's the one that took the mothers to Mississippi, because it was illegal to sell babies in Mississippi not till 2009. So they took him out of Texas when it got hot, and all the press and everybody found out about it, and the news articles were coming out. He moved Bethesda to Mississippi. That's how they got away with that for so long. He was so smart. He's the one that helped get the Indian reservation, 70 acres, and put Regeneration Ranch on there. And still to this day, it's very hard to get any help off that reservation. I kept telling people that's where all the dirty money is. David Gibbs knows where all that money is, and babies and everything. That man knew all of Roloff's secrets right there. But he helped get it all started legally. And he's one of the key players. And then, like I said, he's very smart. He was very smart. Now, I heard him and his son, there's articles and stuff, have fell out because now his son don't want to represent all the pedophiles and stuff and get them all off. You know, he's got a guilty conscience or such. I don't know. They're probably still teaming up and still getting all the money, in my opinion. But there's a good article called The Fixer. David Gibbs Jr. also, when Donald Howard got stepped down from ACE schooling, gotten put in charge of that. And there's a good article, ACE, Abetting and Abiding Abusers. It'll tell you the history. David Gibbs was involved with every little thing. He was just like Jerry Falwell Sr. to me. They both were snakes. They did a lot of dirt to a lot of people for money and greed. And they helped the wrong people. They didn't help the children. They stood against us and got us hurt a lot worse. But he, like I said, did a lot of the legal stuff, a lot of the rallies, a lot of things that were set up was all through him, all the way up till today. These homes still are up and running. They still hold children without no voice. It's a religious loophole. We are told there's nothing we could do. We've tried to pass legislations. We got to go under church and state. It's filed under church and state because they're under the church. And it's a whole hot mess. If you knew the things I knew, that you can look up Agape in Stockton, Missouri. We tried to get them closed a few years back, you know. That's all they were told. It's a religious loophole. The state can't go and get these kids. See, they're not mandated reporters. So in the ACE schooling, a lot of people, which now is a charter school, thanks to DeBose and Trump, see, that was created for the Rebecca girls in 1970. In 1972, we were in the promotional video. And a lot of that was because we were homeschooled because of the injuries and the bruises and stuff. We couldn't go out in public. So they kept us, you know, homeschooled. And a good case for that is evangelical Joe Combs, his daughter Esther. You can look that up on YouTube. I mean, you can research some of this stuff, and your mind will probably blow what they done to children building the religious right. But like George W. Bush said, which I didn't know until I was grown and read the article and really started digging in, it was a social government experiment. That's what we were. And that's a lot of going into some lot more details, which I'll get in eventually. But I just would like to introduce you to David Gibbs Jr. That is a key player, and I know people don't mention him, but I'm telling you, do some research. That's not a nice person either, I guess I would say.
Thursday afternoon, a pastor called me, and he said, "I understand you're a Christian." I said, "I am." He said, "Well, I'd like to come see you." I said, "What about?" He said, "I think I may have been sued for the faith." I said, "Well, I'm sure you're not, but bring me your papers. Let me to look at it." Well, he came to see me later that afternoon, and I looked at his papers, and I said, "You know what? You've been sued for the faith. No question about it." He said, "Well, would you help me?" I said, "Well, I'd be glad to help you, but let me make sure you understand something. I am a rookie lawyer." I said, "The ink on my diploma is not half dry, and this is an incredibly serious lawsuit. You may want a lawyer far more experienced than me." He said, "No, I believe God brought me to you." And he said, "I don't know how I'll pay for this." I said, "Well, it's interesting. We have a ministry that does this." He said, "What's the name of it?" I said, "It doesn't have a name." He said, "Well, how long have you had it?" I said, "Since last Thursday." He said, "Well, I'd be honored to be your first client and help you with this ministry." Unbeknownst to me, that lawsuit and all the things that came out of it would go on for 14 years. And in that gave us the right to have Christian.
Part 4 of The Ugly Truth of the Religious Right. This is 5 films Lester Roloff made in the 70s. The third one, Back to Bedford with Bunyan, nobody seems to know it exists for some reason. It took me a lot of proof to even find this to prove that it existed through the years. I knew because I was in it. I'm in 3 of these films. You can watch them on YouTube. They all been doctored through the years. They're not the originals, actually, but you can see some of it. This is after, like I said, Bob Jones University funded this. We went to many rallies. The Victory Rally, the Rebecca Rally, the Liberty Rally, the Freedom Rally. You know, we went to rallies after rallies with the political parties. Also, we went to every church and traveled and sang and begged for love, asked for love donations to take care of us, you know, bad kids. And he made millions off of us. We were exploited for millions of dollars. And never seized me to say that he did not take no state money. This is not a state home. Really? Because your school in town, the grade school, they even got SNAP benefits. They got all government assistance. Oh, my check, my state and federal check for foster care, you got that too for 3.5 years. All foster check. Oh, but that ain't state money. That's just another lie and myth of the Lester Holmes. Yes, he did take state money. Yes, he did. And I got proof of that when I got out, because I ain't gonna lie, I had to go to Stockholm Syndrome Therapy after my first podcast. I thought I did so good. My counselor's like, "Holy crap," you know. And 10 years I've had the same counselor. It's the first time she heard about Rebecca. It took me that long to even get up to. I had other issues. But anyway, back to the subject. And as you know, the big thing is he did it over the State Licensing Act, Child Safety Act, that was filed in 73. But let me tell you the truth. This is what happened. 1973, a parent walked in to get his daughter. He seen the beating happen and took his daughter and called and made a report. No child did. A parent seen it. And that's what started it. He wouldn't let the inspectors and the state inside the home. You know, it wasn't nothing to do with licensing. It ended up like that. It turned political, just like they did with abortion. They made it an issue and stuff. No, if he cared and he loved us so much, why didn't he just let them people in to check on us, make sure we are okay? But you can't do that with girls black and blue. chained to drain pipes with handcuffs, laying in a pea mattress, locked up in an isolation room for days without a bath, and hungry and bruised and bloody. Then it's kind of hard, huh? Oh, I'm lying. I know. I make all this up, huh? All you religious right people. I just lie. You know, so many of us now that's spoken out. See, there ain't just me. I've been the voice for many years. I got many now that's behind me. I got a whole army that stand with me and say the same thing. It destroyed us. We were getting shattered behind them doors. So the subject was abuse. See, they're separatists. They believe in corporal punishment. And they still do. I mean, they still do. Till today. They believe in them beatings and stuff. And that's what I don't understand. How can you say it's okay to do that because you're a Christian? You know? How? I don't understand it. How is it church and state because these homes are under religious assumption? These kids are getting hurt and some unalived. But there ain't nothing you can do. There's a religious loophole you're telling us? That's what legislation's telling us? Are you kidding? We passed our little laws. We wanted background, simple little things. We got sued. We had to fight and get it back in place. See, people don't know the battle we have fought for religious assumption over these homes to stop the abuse. Now, is it just Lester Roloff and the abuse? Or is it a lot of the ILB, separatists, and Christian nationalists? I'll let you answer that in the future video. Hi, this is continuing off of part 4. So, in 1973, like I said, the abuse charges started coming in. The Welfare Act got passed into law. You know, all licenses had so many kids, you had to have a license, a state license, because there was a couple girls that passed at Azaria Hall in Texas. And you know, they drunk some cleaners and some, you know, and they didn't make it. So children were dying inside and outside of these homes, institutions, at home, you know, and everything. So they came up with some stricter laws. Roloff refused to let them in. No matter how many abuse charges, how many girls ran, how many the judge had to protect and put in the state custody from Roloff. I mean, there's a dark history here. But these charges kept coming. And they just kept coming and coming and coming. And they wouldn't stop. And I'm like, don't they see? You know, we waited every day. You know, we were going to court and Supreme Court. And Roloff would be crying. And we waited and waited to be saved. We just knew one day they were coming. Well, it took a long time. The reporters were always pulling up to the gate. You know, we was very, like I said, governors, senators. We was very thrown in the political ring at that time. Then in 1977, the Freedom Rally at the Dallas Convention, that was a big change. That's when Roloff said, the politicians got to get saved. We have to go to the politicians. And that's when it all really started. There was around 10,000, they say, probably a little bit more. I got a little bit of a clip on my content here. And you'll see us in the background on the Roloff. But it was really crazy. Mike Huckabee wrote an article. There was an article written, and it said, Governor Mike Huckabee is talking about 1970, the big rally. Why haven't I been a reporter for all these years? I never heard of that. Does anybody know about that? You know, he said it was this. I called him up. Well, I don't know where Mike Huckabee was, but he wasn't on the stage with us. That's a whole lie. I said, I got original footage. You know me. I kept it all. And nowhere is on the stage is Mike Huckabee. He might have been in the 10,000 out in the seat, you know, with the rest of them, but not with us Rebecca girls. He was not. And a lot of people take credit for a lot of things that didn't have nothing to do with them. John Hill kept going after him. And when Clements ran up against John Hill, a Republican, and he said he was going to back Roloff, you think James Dobson did something for Trump? Shit. Roloff flipped the whole state of Texas and got all the credit. I got the original news article for that too. By 18,000 votes. Oh, I wonder if that was a rigged re-election. I don't know. It might have been too. 18,000 votes. It flipped the whole state of Texas. Still today in the Texas archives. We're in all the Texas archives, all the government and God and government books. You're going to find chapters of us. John Hill's book. I mean, no matter what, because we were a big part of it. So I ain't just making this stuff up like people want to think. So the abuse continued. The fight, church and state continued. Then we got, Reagan coming in, making promises. Bush coming in, making. When I get into Reagan and Bush, that's when you're really going to think, holy shit. Because you think these people were good people? No, they were just right along with hurting children, kept children, and abused children. Still carries on today in many ways and shapes and forms. And I'll get into that later. But this is the beginning of how it all started. See, it was over racism, abuse. And when something starts from evil, it's always going to be evil. Don't forget, James Dobson was under Paul the known eugenics. And now you just got to think of some of the things that I've been saying and how it's adding up today. See, this stuff was planned 50 years ago. I hadn't heard it all. I can tell you step by step. Like I said, I know the ideology and theology very, very well. So I know what the plan is. To you, better wake up, America. I try to warn you. Keep putting these wackadoodles in office, and this was going to happen. But see, to me, Trump ain't shit. Trump ain't nothing. Trump is a puppet for the Heritage Foundation. They needed somebody to do what they want. They call the shots, believe me, when it comes to this stuff. Man, a lot of it. Trump might be off the wall with other things, but when it comes to these crazy laws and eugenics and stuff like this, it's called positive eugenics. Yeah, that's the Heritage Foundation. This is part 5. And I am going to talk about the Cloverfield movement, child marriage, and being trained. Grooming, I guess you would call it. And see how things are still the same way. They're still wanting the same things. The ideology and theology is still the same. It has never changed. This is my friend. We're still friends today. I haven't talked to her in about a year. But still friends today. See, we had very few rules, but the rules were very strict and covered a wide thing. One of our rules was called meeting of the eyes. Now, meeting of the eyes is you can't look up and look eye to eye. And you definitely cannot look at a boy. So when we went into church, we sat on the right. The boys who came in the other door, they sat on the left. And whatever you did, do not turn your head left. Do not look at them boys. It was not worth the consequences behind it. The girls giggle and, sneak and try. Of course, we were teenagers. But there was no meeting of the eyes, and you could really get punished very severely for that. So my friend, she was in a honeybee. She was a honeybee. She said that Miss Elaine, which is also in the honeybee, and was Lester Roloff's private secretary. Went with them everywhere, even lived in his house. And she was from my hometown. I loved Miss Elaine. I loved her to death. But came to my friend and said, Lester Roloff wants to talk to you. You want to go to his house. You're invited to his house. When she got there, there was a lighthouse boy already there. They were introduced, had lunch. Lester Roloff got to pick the boy for you. You didn't get to pick him. He picked the lighthouse boy and the Rebecca girl. At the age of 17, you could either get married and go to Trailer Row. Trailer Row is a bunch of old junky trailers where the farm people lived. We called it Trailer Row. But you got out of Rebecca, so you can make a choice. My friend chose to get out of Rebecca. She got married 3 months later. Every Sunday they got to spend 1 hour after church together in the church until Lester Roloff married them 3 months later. She lived on the farm. She also worked in town. She had 2 children on the farm. And her podcast is on Hammer Podcast. If anybody would be interested, for a Rebecca girl, me and her was probably the first ones that really started speaking out, and you can hear her side of the story. But she ended up getting married, stayed married for a few years, traveled around, and helped Freedom's Last Call, the movie that got made, and helped do things like that. And that's what she chose. Does she feel it was a bad decision? She got 2 beautiful children, and it is what it is. Because you got to remember, Lighthouse Boys, they had their struggles too. A lot of them did have issues with the law, drugs, and stuff. They were older than us, like the Anchor Home boys, they were the younger boys. They were more up like us, The Jubilee girls, Helper Home, that was the older girls. But us littler ones, we didn't know nothing like that. Now, we were, like I said, we were homeschooled. But one thing I can say, we might not learn how to read, write, or arithmetic, but we did learn how to cook, sew, and clean. We were started off at the very beginning to be groomed as wives. We knew we was going to get married young. We knew we was going to have as many children as we could bear. That's what we were, incubators. And that's exactly what the Quiver for Movement is, to have as many children as you can have. They're pro-life, they don't believe in abortion, they don't believe in birth control, to build God's army. I'm trying to think of a good way to word it without education purposes, only TikTok. To take the gray away, and to have strong white gender families. And to make God's army. So you have to remember, we were going to be the first Christian city. So we was already getting trained, how to do all this stuff, even at an early age. Even though we was called whores and prostitutes and dope fiends and eternal cases nobody wanted. But we were sure going to be somebody's good Christian wife. And I really wanted to be a good Christian wife. I did. I tried so hard. That's what I wanted. I mean, that's what we was taught, and I wanted it really bad. Sometimes it didn't work out like you always had planned. The white picket fence and the flowers, sometimes it just don't work out like you planned. But this is our only way out. Our only way out right there. So, remember when Roe and Wade got flipped? And I was trying to explain to people, this had nothing to do with saving babies. The abortion thing, completely, even back in my day. Oh, that'd be part 6, I think. Let me tell you how I found out about abortion. But anyway, it has nothing to do with saving babies. As you see here, the Quiver for Movement, you see right here, 2020, what it was based on, and still is. It was, they needed more white babies, actually. Let's just put it out there. Let's just keep it on the raw and the real. Education purposes only. TikTok. The birth rate they thought was going down. I think in 1955, 80% were white babies, and it's dropped down to like 56%. Because of mixing and different things, different races coming in and stuff. And the political right, the GOP, MAGA, they were having a whole fit about it. It had nothing to do with saving babies. It had to do with saving the white race, and being a strong white family. As you know, positive eugenics, James Dobson, Paul Pannone. You got to know the history behind it. So all this pro-life, and when you're yelling, save the babies, I only got one question for you. Are you going to raise that baby? Are you going to feed that baby? Are you going to put that baby in school? Are you going to close that baby? Are you going to get that baby a home if the next person didn't want it or didn't want it? Or are you going to be putting in institutions and homes like we were, unwanted children to be abused and messed up for the rest of their life? I would have chose abortion if I could have had my mom. Please abort me. I would never want to live the life I lived. as a child. But as you see, boom, 2020, it has nothing to do with babies. But it does have everything to do with positive eugenics. The new dorm at Rebecca was built in 1974. I got there in 1976. It was a $3 million dorm. But every room had an intercom. And places throughout the dorm, the school, everywhere was wired for sound. And they listened to it too. We were not allowed to talk about nothing really. TV, books, friends, family, nothing. If you did, that was called failing to tell on a sinner. You had to tell on the person or you got in trouble. And they would tell us every day what to wear. Red skirt, red checkered, white blouse, blue tie, or if we went to rallies or this and that. If you didn't know, the fundamentalist separatists, they supported abortion. Probably to 75, maybe even 76. I mean, they were still thinking it was a good thing for health crisis and stuff. I mean, they were not against it. And when they really started picking up on that, and they used it for a political ploy, because so many people got drawn to that. I think that was, my personal opinion, was over negative eugenics and what was going on with that back then. It was pretty gruesome and bad, and people, defended that situation. And it was nothing to do with saving babies, though. It was a political move. And it got very strong, as you see still today. Well, we're 12, 13-year-old girls. We didn't know nothing about that. We didn't even have consensual sex yet, Not, that was a myth, all that he was saying about us. We were little kids. And so we got something given to us, we don't know what, that stopped our monthlies. We never had a monthly in there. And every Saturday we had to drink this funny tasting tea. Come to find out, the tea was an abortion drink. If you did come up pregnant. My friend Mardell, she was 6 weeks pregnant when she came in and drank the tea, and she aborted the next day. They just wrap it up, throw it in a garbage can like it's no big deal. You get a toothbrush and you got to clean up your mess. Because it's, if you create a mess, that's a punishment too. I watched a girl one time get licks. She was getting licks and she lost her baby and the same thing. Got a toothbrush and you had to clean up your mess. Then you go right out to the fields. There ain't no taking no break or nothing like that. You went straight out to work and worked hard. So we're on this bus and we're learning and we're going to this rally. We're learning we're going to the abortion rally. Big, and at this time it was a big political thing starting to come. Jerry Falwell just started weaseling his way in there quite a bit at this point. He never really started getting in there till like 77. And that was because he was involved in the Herbert Armstrong, Big Sandy, Texas, and William F. Means. Wait till I tell you that story. It's a true story. And guess who got the original article? Oh my God. Why would I keep something like that? And so that's a really crazy story. But we was on our way to Jerry Falwell and to his rally. And we all was learning what an abortion was on that bus. And we're all sitting there like kind of dumbfounded, like, holy crap, But that's how I found out exactly what an abortion was. And, they made it sound really bad, ripping off legs and tearing off the head. And, and you're a little kid, 12, 13 years old, and you're just like, oh my God, Well, I didn't know at that time it was just a clump of cells. And what really was going on, but they made it sound pretty drastic, and it was pretty way of a trip all the way there, and we'd get there, and it was a big rally too. A lot of people was there, a lot of politicians, and a lot of, that's when he, like I said, he was just getting in there and weaseling his way in there. So it was a big ordeal, and that's how abortion got into the fundamental separatists, Christian nationalists. It had nothing to do with no saving no babies or no health issues or nothing like that. It was a political ploy all the way through, because they care less about the babies because they were selling them, getting money for them. Liberty University still today, still right now, has a maternity home. They talk, because, if you get pregnant, and you're not unmarried or something happens, you're a sinner and it's bad. And they talk to them women still today to give up them babies. They sign them over. Research it, you'll find out. And just like they did our babies, and like many of our babies have never been found still today. And a lot of them don't have birth certificates. They're born right there on the farm. So if you're an independent fundamental Baptist, Christian nationalist, or a separatist, and you are adopted and you don't know who your parents are, please take a 23andMe, because you were never given away. You was not wanted. You were taken, stolen, and sold. 1978 in Indiana, Pastor Larson had a rally. Everybody went. This was a very tight community. Supported each other 100%. Then Dallas Freedom Rally was December 1st, and January 1st was Austin at the Capitol. They took on the government and won. And when we flipped Texas from Democrat to Republican for the first time in 1978, they all went nuts. They became wackadoodles. It gives, you see his name, he's the Christian Law Association. He was everybody's attorney, the fixer. So made ACE schooling, homeschooling. Everybody knew about the abuse and no
Holy War. In Indiana, the moral majority claims laws against child abuse are not compatible with the Bible. They rally around a man accused of beating his son, a charge made by the boy's grandparents.
I'm Dr. Greg Dixon. I'm pastor of the Indianapolis Baptist Temple in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm the National Secretary of Moral Majority, and I'm state chairman of the Indiana Moral Majority.
And can you tell us why you're here today?
Yes, I'm here to protest this horrible child abuse law that was passed by the Indiana General Assembly a few years ago. And what they're doing, they're establishing Gestapo agencies all over the state of Indiana called child abuse or child protection agencies.
They've taken this little boy out of his home and, you know, for no apparent reason at all outside of what we would consider just normal biblical discipline. I talked to one attorney who said he locks his child in a closet whenever they disobey.
Fundamentalist Christians believe the Bible, and it even says that the blueness of a wound cleanseth the inward parts. Who owns the child? The state or the parents?
Does anyone own the child? Does the child have any rights?
God owns the children, and he gives the parents the right to raise those children.
In months of protest and demonstration, Reverend Dixon and his followers are the loudest voice heard.